The morning sun cast long shadows across the training compound as Captain Sarah Mitchell completed her 15th mile of the day. Her breathing remained steady, controlled, even as sweat dripped from her brow onto the dusty ground beneath her feet. At 28 years old, she had already earned a reputation that preceded her wherever she went within the special operations community. Sarah had not always been destined for this life. Born in a small town in Montana, she grew up on her family's ranch, learning to shoot before she could properly tie her shoes. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her that strength came not from size or aggression, but from discipline, intelligence, and the ability to remain calm when everything around you fell apart. These lessons would prove invaluable in the years to come. After graduating from West Point with honors, Sarah had volunteered for every challenging assignment available. She completed Ranger School, earning her tab among the first group of women to do so. The training had been brutal, designed to break even the strongest candidates. Many of her male counterparts had dropped out during the grueling mountain phase, but Sarah had pressed forward, her determination unwavering even when her body screamed for rest. The instructors had initially been skeptical. They had seen women attempt the course before, and while some had shown promise, none had displayed the particular combination of physical capability, mental resilience, and tactical acumen that Sarah possessed. By the end of the first week, their doubts had begun to fade. By graduation, they spoke of her with the same respect reserved for their most elite graduates. Following Ranger School, Sarah had been recruited for Delta Force selection. The process was shrouded in secrecy, conducted at a location that did not officially exist on any military maps. Candidates were identified through a careful screening process that looked not just at their military records, but at their psychological profiles, their ability to operate independently, and their capacity to make life or death decisions under extreme pressure. The selection course lasted for months. Candidates were pushed beyond their physical and mental limits through a series of exercises that simulated real-world operations. They were dropped into hostile environments with minimal equipment and told to complete objectives that seemed impossible. Many candidates never made it past the first phase. Others broke during the psychological evaluation, unable to cope with the stress of constant uncertainty and the knowledge that failure meant not just personal disappointment, but potentially the deaths of teammates. Sarah thrived in this environment. Where other candidates saw obstacles, she saw puzzles to be solved. Where they saw overwhelming odds, she saw opportunities to demonstrate creativity and resourcefulness. Her instructors noted her ability to remain focused during extended periods of sleep deprivation, her skill at improvising solutions with whatever materials were available, and her natural talent for reading people and situations. One particular exercise stood out in her file. Candidates were given a scenario involving a hostage rescue in an urban environment. The building was heavily defended, with multiple entry points all seemingly well guarded. Most candidates attempted direct assault approaches, relying on speed and firepower to overcome the defenders. Sarah studied the situation for hours, noting patterns in the guard rotations, identifying weaknesses in their communication systems, and observing the civilian population in the surrounding area. Instead of attacking the building, she infiltrated the local community. Within 2 days, she had established herself as a street vendor, selling food to the guards and other locals. She used this position to gather intelligence about the building's interior layout, the number of hostages, and the psychological state of the captors. On the third night, she used information gathered from casual conversations to create a diversion that drew most of the guards away from the building. While they investigated reports of suspicious activity several blocks away, she entered through a service entrance that most candidates had not even identified. The hostage rescue was completed without a single shot being fired. The exercise supervisors were so impressed that they asked her to explain her methodology to other candidates. Sarah's response was characteristically modest. She explained that she had simply observed that the guards were more focused on obvious threats than on routine activities. By becoming part of the routine, she had rendered herself invisible. After completing Delta Force selection, Sarah was assigned to a unit that specialized in high-value target elimination and sensitive site reconnaissance. Her first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where she spent 8 months conducting operations against Taliban leadership. The work was dangerous and demanding, requiring her to operate in small teams behind enemy lines for extended periods. Her team leader, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, was a veteran of countless operations who had initially been doubtful about working with a female operator. His concerns had nothing to do with Sarah's capabilities, which were evident from her record, but rather with the additional complications that her presence might create in certain cultural contexts. These concerns proved to be unfounded. Sarah's ability to blend into local populations proved to be a significant advantage. In a region where Western military personnel were immediately recognizable and therefore vulnerable, her skill at adopting local dress and mannerisms allowed her to gather intelligence that would have been impossible for her male colleagues to obtain. She spent weeks living among Afghan women, learning their customs and language, developing relationships that provided crucial information about enemy movements and plans. During one operation, her team was tasked with locating a high-value target who was believed to be hiding in a remote mountain village. Traditional surveillance methods had proven ineffective, as the village was small enough that any strangers would be immediately noticed and reported. Sarah proposed a different approach. She spent 2 weeks studying the village from a distance, observing the daily routines of its inhabitants. She noticed that women from surrounding areas regularly came to the village to trade goods and visit relatives. Working with local allies, she established a cover identity as a widow from a nearby settlement who was seeking to remarry. This identity gave her a legitimate reason to spend time in the village and to ask questions about the men who lived there. The deception was risky. If her true identity were discovered, she would likely be killed immediately, and her team would be too far away to provide assistance. But Sarah's preparation was thorough. She had studied the local dialect intensively, practiced local customs until they became second nature, and developed a detailed backstory that would hold up under casual scrutiny. Her patience was rewarded when, after 6 days in the village, she identified the target. He was living under an assumed name in a compound that had not appeared on any intelligence reports. More importantly, she learned that he was planning to leave the village within the next 48 hours to attend a meeting with other Taliban leaders. The intelligence Sarah provided allowed her team to plan and execute a capture operation that resulted in not only the apprehension of their primary target, but also the identification and subsequent arrest of several other high-value individuals. The operation was considered one of the most successful of the deployment, and Sarah's role in its success was noted in her performance evaluation. As her reputation grew, Sarah found herself being selected for increasingly sensitive missions. She completed advanced training in multiple specialized skills, including explosive ordnance disposal, advanced marksmanship, and psychological operations. Each new skill set expanded her capabilities and made her more valuable to her unit. Her marksmanship abilities, in particular, set her apart from her peers. Sarah had always been a natural shooter, but under the guidance of military instructors, her skills reached exceptional levels. She could consistently hit targets at ranges that challenged even veteran snipers, and she demonstrated an intuitive understanding of environmental factors like wind speed, humidity, and atmospheric pressure that affected bullet trajectory. During a training exercise at a facility in North Carolina, Sarah was asked to demonstrate her abilities for a group of visiting foreign military officials. The exercise involved multiple targets at varying distances, some stationary and others moving, all to be engaged within a specific time limit. The scenario was designed to simulate a real-world situation where a sniper might need to eliminate multiple threats quickly to protect friendly forces. Sarah completed the exercise in less than half the allotted time, hitting every target with precision that impressed even the most experienced observers. When asked about her technique, she explained that she approached each shot not as an isolated event, but as part of a larger sequence. By planning her entire engagement before taking the first shot, she could optimize her positioning and timing to achieve maximum efficiency. This holistic approach to problem-solving became Sarah's trademark. Whether planning a mission, analyzing intelligence, or executing an operation, she always considered multiple variables and potential outcomes. Her colleagues learned to trust her instincts, even when her proposed solutions seemed unconventional or risky. As her second deployment approached, Sarah was assigned to a new unit with an even higher classification level. The missions they conducted were so sensitive that even their existence was known only to a small number of senior officials. The unit operated with almost complete autonomy, selecting their own targets and determining their own methods based on strategic objectives provided by national command authorities. The transition to this new level of operations required additional training and security clearances. Sarah spent months at classified facilities, learning advanced techniques in covert operations, surveillance, and intelligence analysis. She studied foreign languages, cultural practices, and political structures of regions where she might be deployed. The preparation was exhaustive, covering every conceivable aspect of clandestine operations. Her new teammates were among the most elite operators in the military. Each had been selected not just for their tactical skills, but for their ability to operate independently under extreme stress. Trust was essential in this environment, as team members often had to rely on each other in situations where backup was not available, and failure meant death. Sarah quickly established herself as a valued member of the team. Her attention to detail, combined with her ability to think creatively under pressure, made her an ideal choice for the most complex and dangerous missions. She developed a reputation for finding solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable, often using methods that no one else had considered. The unit's first mission together took them to Eastern Europe, where they were tasked with gathering intelligence on a criminal organization that was suspected of trafficking weapons to terrorist groups. The operation required them to penetrate the organization's security structure and identify its leadership, all while maintaining cover identities that would allow them to operate freely in hostile territory. Sarah's role in the mission was to pose as an art dealer with connections to wealthy collectors who might be interested in acquiring rare and potentially stolen artifacts. This cover identity gave her access to high society events where members of the criminal organization were known to operate. The challenge was to make contact with these individuals without arousing suspicion, while simultaneously gathering information about their activities and organizational structure. The mission lasted for 3 months, and required Sarah to maintain her cover identity under constant scrutiny. She attended gallery openings, private parties, and exclusive auctions, always playing her role while searching for opportunities to advance the mission objectives. The work was mentally exhausting, requiring her to constantly monitor her behavior and words to ensure that nothing she said or did contradicted her assumed identity. Her breakthrough came when she successfully cultivated a relationship with the organization's financial coordinator, a woman who managed money laundering operations through legitimate art transactions. By presenting herself as someone who could facilitate the movement of high-value artworks across international borders, Sarah gained the woman's trust and was eventually invited to participate in a major transaction. The intelligence gathered during this operation led to the identification and subsequent arrest of over 24 individuals involved in the trafficking network. More importantly, it provided crucial information about the organization's connections to terrorist groups and their methods for moving weapons and financing across international borders. Sarah's success in this mission marked her as one of the unit's most capable operators. Her ability to maintain complex cover identities while gathering critical intelligence made her an invaluable asset for future operations. As she prepared for her next assignment, she had no idea that it would lead to events that would change her life forever, and ultimately result in a reputation that would make her legendary within the special operations community. The assignment that would forever change how Sarah was perceived within the special operations community came 18 months after her successful Eastern European operation. Intelligence agencies had identified a new threat emerging from the shadows of international terrorism, one that required a response unlike anything attempted before. The target was Viktor Kozlov, a former Russian intelligence officer who had gone rogue after the collapse of certain covert programs. Kozlov had established himself as a broker of classified information and advanced weapons technology, selling to the highest bidder regardless of their intentions or affiliations. His network spanned 3 continents and included contacts within multiple government agencies, making traditional intelligence gathering nearly impossible. What made Kozlov particularly dangerous was not just his access to sensitive information, but his psychological profile. CIA analysts had determined that he was driven not by money or ideology, but by a desire to create chaos and instability. He seemed to take pleasure in arranging deals that would maximize potential for conflict and destruction. Recent intelligence suggested he was negotiating the sale of advanced surface-to-air missile systems to terrorist organizations planning attacks on civilian aircraft. The mission briefing took place in a secure facility outside Washington, D.C. Sarah and 3 other operators were presented with intelligence that had been gathered over the course of 2 years. Kozlov was careful, paranoid, and extremely well protected. He never stayed in one location for more than a few days, always traveled with a security detail of former military personnel, and used multiple layers of encrypted communication to conduct his business. Traditional approaches had all been considered and rejected. Kozlov's security was too sophisticated for a direct assault, and his movements were too unpredictable for conventional surveillance. He had survived at least 3 assassination attempts by other intelligence agencies, learning from each experience and adapting his protective measures accordingly. The mission would require something completely different. Sarah studied the intelligence files for days, absorbing every detail about Kozlov's known activities, associates, and behavioral patterns. She identified a potential weakness in his otherwise impenetrable security structure. Despite his paranoia about government agencies and rival criminals, Kozlov appeared to have a blind spot when it came to women who posed no obvious threat. Intelligence reports showed that he had a pattern of becoming involved with women he met through his social activities. These relationships never lasted long, but during their brief duration, the women were given access to Kozlov that his security team would never grant to male associates. Sarah realized that this weakness could be exploited, but only by someone capable of maintaining an extremely sophisticated long-term deception. The plan she proposed was audacious and dangerous. She would establish a cover identity as a European socialite with connections to the art world, similar to her previous operation but far more complex. The identity would need to withstand intensive scrutiny, as Kozlov's people were known to conduct thorough background checks on anyone who entered his inner circle. Creating the cover identity required months of preparation. Sarah worked with specialists in document forgery, financial record creation, and social media manipulation to build a complete false history. She became Isabella Russo, the daughter of a deceased Italian industrialist, educated in Switzerland. With interests in contemporary art and classical music, the identity was supported by bank records, university transcripts, social media posts dating back several years, and references from people who had been carefully recruited to support the deception. Learning to become Isabella required Sarah to master new skills beyond anything she had previously attempted. She spent weeks with dialect coaches, learning to speak English with the subtle accent that someone of Isabella's background would possess. She studied art history, classical music, and European high society customs until she could discuss them with the same knowledge and passion that would be expected of someone who had grown up in that world. The physical transformation was equally important. Sarah's appearance was altered through subtle changes to her hair color, makeup techniques, and fashion choices. She learned to carry herself differently, adopting the posture and mannerisms of someone accustomed to wealth and privilege. Every aspect of her behavior was carefully crafted to match Isabella's supposed background and personality. The operation began in Monaco, where intelligence indicated that Kozlov would be attending a private art auction. Sarah, as Isabella, had arranged to be invited to the same event through connections she had carefully cultivated over the previous months. The challenge was to make contact with Kozlov in a way that seemed natural and spontaneous, while avoiding the attention of his security team. Sarah spent the evening moving through the auction house, studying the artwork, and engaging in conversations with other attendees. She had researched the backgrounds of everyone expected to be present, preparing topics of conversation that would establish her credibility as Isabella. When Kozlov arrived, she was ready. The initial contact was brief and seemingly insignificant. Sarah had positioned herself near a particular painting that she knew would interest Kozlov, based on his known preferences. When he approached to examine the piece, she made a casual comment about the artist's technique that demonstrated both knowledge and genuine appreciation. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it was enough to establish a connection. Over the following weeks, Sarah carefully orchestrated a series of apparently coincidental encounters. She appeared at galleries, restaurants, and social events where Kozlov was likely to be present, each time building on their previous interaction. She demonstrated intelligence without appearing threatening, sophistication without seeming artificial, and independence without appearing unattainable. The cultivation process required extraordinary patience and self-control. Sarah had to resist the natural instinct to gather intelligence quickly, instead allowing the relationship to develop at a pace that seemed natural to Kozlov. She endured weeks of social interactions that provided no useful information, maintaining her cover identity while waiting for opportunities to learn about his activities. The breakthrough came when Kozlov invited Isabella to accompany him to a private concert in Vienna. The invitation indicated that she had successfully penetrated his social circle. But it also represented a significant escalation in the operation's risk level. Vienna was one of Kozlov's regular locations, and his security arrangements there would be more sophisticated than anything Sarah had previously encountered. The concert was held in a private venue that Kozlov's organization had rented for the evening. Sarah entered, knowing that she was now operating in an environment where any mistake could be fatal. Kozlov's security team would be watching everyone present, and the slightest inconsistency in her behavior could expose her true identity. During the concert, Sarah observed details about Kozlov's organization that had not been available through conventional intelligence gathering. She noted the communication patterns between security team members, identified individuals who appeared to have decision-making authority, and observed the protocols they followed for protecting their principal. The information was invaluable, but gathering it required her to maintain perfect composure while under constant scrutiny. After the concert, Kozlov invited Isabella to a private dinner at his temporary residence. This was the opportunity Sarah had been working toward, but it also represented the most dangerous phase of the operation. She would be alone with Kozlov and his immediate entourage, with no backup available if her cover was compromised. The dinner conversation provided Sarah with insights into Kozlov's current activities and future plans. He spoke openly about his business dealings, apparently trusting Isabella enough to share information that he would never reveal to others. She learned about pending transactions, upcoming meetings, and the identities of several previously unknown associates. Most importantly, Sarah discovered that Kozlov was planning a major arms sale scheduled to take place within the next month. The buyer was identified only as the Syrian contact, but the description of the weapons being sold matched intelligence reports about materials that had recently gone missing from a Russian military depot. The sale, if completed, could provide terrorist organizations with capabilities that would dramatically increase their potential for causing mass casualties. Sarah transmitted this intelligence to her handlers using a communication system that had been carefully designed to avoid detection. The information was too sensitive to risk delaying, but any transmission carried the possibility of exposure. She had to balance the need for immediate action against the requirement to maintain her cover for future intelligence gathering. The response from headquarters was swift and decisive. The intelligence Sarah had provided was considered credible and urgent enough to warrant immediate action. However, stopping the arms sale would require more than just knowing when and where it would take place. The operation would need to be disrupted in a way that prevented future similar transactions while preserving Sarah's cover identity. The plan that emerged from subsequent briefings was complex and ambitious. Sarah would remain in place as Isabella, continuing to gather intelligence while a parallel operation was organized to intercept the arms sale. The interception would need to appear as though it resulted from intelligence gathered through other means, protecting Sarah's position within Kozlov's organization. Executing this plan required Sarah to maintain her cover while secretly coordinating with other team members who were positioning themselves around Vienna. Communication was limited to emergency protocols, forcing her to operate with minimal guidance and support. Every decision she made could affect not only her own safety, but the success of the broader operation. As the date of the planned arms sale approached, tensions within Kozlov's organization began to increase. Security measures were enhanced, communication protocols were changed, and several planned activities were canceled or moved to different locations. Sarah realized that someone within the organization suspected that they were under surveillance, though her cover identity had not been specifically compromised. The atmosphere of suspicion created new dangers for Sarah's operation. Kozlov's security team began conducting more intensive background checks on everyone in his social circle. Sarah's cover identity was subjected to scrutiny that could potentially reveal inconsistencies that had not been apparent during earlier, less thorough investigations. One evening, While attending another social event with Kozlov, Sarah was approached by his head of security, a former Spetsnaz officer named Dmitry Volkov. The conversation appeared casual, but Sarah recognized it as an interrogation designed to test her knowledge and reactions. Volkov asked detailed questions about Isabella's supposed background, focusing on specific events and people that would be difficult to fabricate convincingly. Sarah's preparation proved crucial during this encounter. She answered Volkov's questions with confidence and accuracy, providing details that demonstrated intimate familiarity with Isabella's supposed history. However, she also recognized that Volkov's suspicions had not been entirely alleviated. He would likely continue investigating, and any future inconsistencies could prove fatal. That night, Sarah made a decision that would ultimately earn her the call sign that would define the rest of her career. Rather than waiting for Volkov's investigation to potentially expose her, she chose to take proactive action that would eliminate the threat, while simultaneously advancing the mission objectives. The opportunity came when she learned that Volkov planned to meet with his contacts in Austrian intelligence to verify certain aspects of Isabella's background. Sarah realized that this meeting could expose weaknesses in her cover identity that might not withstand professional scrutiny. She decided to prevent the meeting from taking place. Using skills she had developed during her years in special operations, Sarah tracked Volkov to the location where he planned to meet his contact. The meeting was scheduled to take place in a public park, chosen specifically because its open nature would make surveillance difficult and provide multiple escape routes if the situation became dangerous. Sarah positioned herself where she could observe the meeting while remaining undetected. Her plan was to gather intelligence about what information Volkov was seeking, then take action to prevent him from obtaining it. However, when she observed the participants in the meeting, she realized that the situation was more complex than she had anticipated. The Austrian intelligence officer was someone Sarah recognized from previous briefings. He was known to have connections to several hostile intelligence services and was suspected of selling information to the highest bidder. If Volkov was meeting with this particular individual, it suggested that Kozlov's organization had penetrated Austrian intelligence services more deeply than anyone had realized. Sarah found herself facing a decision that would test every aspect of her training and judgment. She could attempt to prevent the meeting through indirect means, such as creating a distraction that would force its postponement. Alternatively, she could take direct action that would eliminate the immediate threat but potentially expose her presence in Vienna. The choice she made would later be described in classified reports as demonstrating exceptional tactical judgment under extreme pressure. Rather than taking either of the obvious approaches, Sarah created a third option that accomplished multiple objectives simultaneously. She contacted Austrian police, reporting suspicious activity in the park that required immediate investigation. The report was crafted to suggest possible terrorist activity, ensuring rapid response without revealing specific details about what she had observed. When police arrived at the scene, they found both Volkov and his contact engaged in what appeared to be a clandestine meeting involving sensitive materials. The intervention achieved several important results. Volkov was detained for questioning, preventing him from gathering information about Isabella's background. The Austrian intelligence officer was exposed as having unauthorized contacts with foreign operatives. Most importantly, the incident created confusion within Kozlov's organization that provided cover for Sarah's continued activities. When news of Volkov's detention reached Kozlov, his reaction provided Sarah with additional insights into his operations and priorities. Rather than being concerned primarily about his security chief's welfare, Kozlov was focused on determining whether Volkov had compromised any ongoing activities. This reaction suggested that the organization was involved in operations more sensitive than even the arms sale that had been identified. In the days following Volkov's detention, Sarah noticed changes in the behavior and attitudes of people around Kozlov. There was increased anxiety about security, more frequent changes to communication protocols, and greater secrecy about upcoming activities. These changes created both opportunities and challenges for her continued intelligence gathering. The atmosphere of uncertainty within the organization worked to Sarah's advantage in some ways. With attention focused on potential external threats, there was less scrutiny of individuals already accepted within Kozlov's social circle. Sarah was able to observe conversations and activities that might normally have been hidden from outsiders. However, the heightened security also made her position more precarious. Any unusual behavior or inconsistency in her cover identity would now be viewed with greater suspicion. Sarah realized that her time as Isabella was limited, and she would need to gather as much critical intelligence as possible before circumstances forced her to abandon the identity. The opportunity for final intelligence gathering came when Kozlov decided to accelerate the timeline for the arms sale. The combination of Volkov's detention and increased security concerns had convinced him that his current location was becoming too dangerous. He announced plans to complete the transaction within the next week and then relocate his entire operation to a different region. This decision created urgency for both Sarah's intelligence mission and the broader operation to prevent the arms sale. With limited time remaining, she would need to gather final details about the transaction while positioning herself to assist with its interdiction. The challenge was accomplishing both objectives without compromising her cover or safety. As the final phase of the operation approached, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The mission had required her to push her skills and abilities beyond anything she had previously attempted. She had successfully penetrated one of the most secure criminal organizations in the world, gathering intelligence that would save countless lives and prevent weapons from reaching terrorist groups. But she also recognized that this operation marked a transition in her career. The success of the Isabella identity had demonstrated her unique capabilities in ways that would inevitably lead to more complex and dangerous assignments. She was becoming known within the special operations community as someone capable of accomplishing the impossible, a reputation that would both open new opportunities and attract new dangers. The events of the next few days would test her abilities one final time and earn her a call sign that would become legendary within elite military circles. As she prepared for the culmination of months of careful planning and preparation, Sarah Mitchell had no idea that she was about to become Dark Angel. The arms sale was scheduled to take place at midnight in an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Vienna. Sarah had learned the location through careful observation of Kozlov's communications, noting patterns in his travel arrangements and the movements of his security team. The facility had been chosen because it offered multiple escape routes while providing sufficient privacy for the transfer of sensitive materials. Sarah's role in the final operation was more complex than anything she had previously attempted. She needed to maintain her cover as Isabella, while secretly coordinating with her team to ensure the arms sale was successfully interdicted. The challenge was accomplishing this without exposing her true identity or compromising future operations against Kozlov's network. The plan required precise timing and flawless execution. Sarah would accompany Kozlov to the meeting as Isabella, providing real-time intelligence about the participants and security arrangements. Meanwhile, her team would position themselves around the facility, ready to move when the moment was optimal. The goal was to capture or eliminate the participants while securing the weapons before they could be transferred. As evening approached, Sarah made final preparations for what she knew could be her last night as Isabella Russo. She had grown attached to certain aspects of the identity during the months of operation, but she also recognized that the mission was approaching its natural conclusion. Win or lose, Isabella's usefulness would end after tonight's events. Kozlov arrived at the rendezvous point earlier than expected, accompanied by a security detail that was larger and more heavily armed than intelligence reports had suggested. Sarah quickly transmitted this information to her team, knowing that they would need to adjust their plans based on the increased opposition they would face. The drive to the industrial complex took them through parts of Vienna that Isabella would never normally visit. Sarah used this opportunity to observe the route and identify potential complications for the upcoming operation. She noted the locations of security checkpoints, the positioning of Kozlov's advance team, and the communication procedures being used by his organization. When they arrived at the facility, Sarah saw that the location was even more defensible than she had anticipated. The complex consisted of several buildings connected by covered walkways, providing multiple positions where defenders could establish overlapping fields of fire. The main building had been modified with additional security measures, including surveillance cameras and motion sensors that would detect any unauthorized approach. Inside the main building, Sarah observed the final preparations for the arms sale. The weapons were impressive and terrifying in their sophistication. Advanced surface-to-air missiles, anti-tank weapons, and electronic warfare equipment were arranged for inspection by potential buyers. If these weapons reached their intended recipients, they would significantly increase the capabilities of terrorist organizations worldwide. The buyers arrived precisely at midnight, as scheduled. Sarah recognized some of them from intelligence briefings as known terrorist operatives, while others were unfamiliar faces who had apparently remained successfully hidden from international surveillance efforts. The group included technical experts who began immediately examining the weapons to verify their authenticity and operational status. As the examination proceeded, Sarah identified the optimal moment for her team to begin their assault. The buyers were concentrated in the main building, focused on the weapons rather than security concerns. Most of Kozlov's security team was positioned outside, watching for external threats rather than monitoring the activities inside the building. Sarah excused herself from the main group, explaining to Kozlov that Isabella needed to step outside for fresh air. This was the signal her team had been waiting for, indicating that she was clear of the immediate target area and ready for the operation to begin. She positioned herself in a location that would provide cover, while allowing her to observe and assist with the assault. The attack began with the systematic elimination of Kozlov's external security team. Sarah's colleagues moved with precision and silence, neutralizing sentries one by one without alerting those inside the building. Their approach was methodical and professional, demonstrating the training and experience that made them among the world's elite operators. When the external security had been cleared, the assault team prepared to enter the main building. This was the most dangerous phase of the operation, as the participants in the arms sale would likely resist capture with whatever weapons were immediately available. The challenge was securing the high-value targets, while preventing the destruction of evidence and materials. Sarah realized that the standard assault plan would not be sufficient for the current situation. The layout of the building and the number of armed participants created risks that could result in casualties among her team members. She made a decision that would define her reputation within the special operations community for years to come. Instead of waiting for her team to assault the building, Sarah chose to create an opportunity that would give them a decisive advantage. Using skills she had developed during years of training, she moved through the building's service areas to position herself behind the main group of participants. Her plan was to create confusion and disruption that would allow her team to enter with minimal resistance. The opportunity came when one of the technical experts discovered a problem with one of the missile systems. As attention focused on resolving the technical issue, Sarah emerged from concealment directly behind the group. Moving with speed and precision that surprised even experienced fighters, she systematically neutralized the most dangerous participants before they could react to her presence. The action lasted less than 30 seconds, but in that brief time, Sarah eliminated 5 armed individuals while simultaneously securing the technical expert, whose knowledge was crucial for understanding the weapon's capabilities. Her movements were fluid and efficient, demonstrating a level of combat skill that few operators could match. When her team entered the building moments later, they found most of the resistance had already been eliminated. Kozlov and the remaining participants surrendered when confronted with the overwhelming tactical disadvantage they now faced. The entire operation was completed with minimal casualties and maximum intelligence value. It was during the post-operation briefing that Sarah first heard the call sign that would define the rest of her career. One of her team members, describing the assault to their commanding officer, referred to her as appearing like a dark angel, bringing swift judgment to those who deserved it. The description captured not only her tactical effectiveness, but the almost supernatural way she had moved through the building. The call sign stuck immediately. Within hours, everyone involved in the operation was referring to Sarah as Dark Angel. When the story reached higher command levels, the name became official, appearing in classified reports and operation summaries. For Sarah, it represented both recognition of her exceptional abilities and the beginning of a new phase in her career. The Vienna operation's success led to a series of increasingly complex and sensitive assignments. Sarah found herself being called upon for missions that required her unique combination of skills, often operating alone or with minimal support in situations where traditional military approaches were ineffective. One assignment took her to Southeast Asia, where she spent months infiltrating a network that was trafficking weapons and personnel across international borders. Another mission involved establishing a false identity within a criminal organization operating in South America, gathering intelligence that led to the disruption of several major drug trafficking operations. With each successful mission, Sarah's reputation grew within the special operations community. She became known as someone who could accomplish objectives that others considered impossible, operating in environments and situations that would challenge even the most experienced operators. The Dark Angel call sign became synonymous with precision, professionalism, and results. However, the increased attention also created new challenges and dangers. Sarah's success had made her valuable, but it had also made her a target. Hostile intelligence services began searching for information about the operator known as Dark Angel, hoping to identify and eliminate someone who had become a significant threat to their activities. Security protocols were enhanced to protect Sarah's identity and location. She was assigned a series of cover identities that were even more sophisticated than Isabella Russo, supported by resources that few operators had access to. Her missions became more compartmentalized, with operational details known only to the minimum number of personnel required for success. Despite these precautions, Sarah began to notice signs that her true identity might be compromised. During a mission in Eastern Europe, she encountered individuals who seemed to recognize her despite her cover identity. Communications intercepts suggested that certain hostile organizations had developed detailed profiles of American Special Operations personnel, possibly including information about her. The situation became critical during an operation in Central Asia. Sarah was tasked with gathering intelligence about a weapons trafficking network that was suspected of providing advanced technology to terrorist groups. The mission required her to establish a new cover identity and infiltrate the organization's leadership structure. 3 weeks into the operation, Sarah realized that her cover had been compromised. Surveillance patterns around her location changed, communications protocols within the target organization were modified, and several planned activities were suddenly canceled. Someone within the network had identified her as an American intelligence operative. Rather than aborting the mission and potentially losing months of intelligence gathering, Sarah made a decision that demonstrated both her tactical brilliance and her willingness to sacrifice for mission success. She chose to use her compromised status to gather final critical intelligence while simultaneously eliminating key figures within the trafficking network. The operation she planned was audacious and extremely dangerous. Sarah would reveal herself as an American operative, using the surprise and confusion this created to gain access to information that would otherwise be unobtainable. The plan required precise timing and flawless execution, as any mistake would likely result in her death. On the night she implemented the plan, Sarah infiltrated the network's main facility and confronted its leadership directly. She presented herself not as someone seeking to destroy their organization, but as an American operative, willing to negotiate a deal that would benefit both sides. The deception was designed to keep them talking while she gathered intelligence and positioned herself for action. During the conversation, Sarah learned details about the network's activities that confirmed intelligence agencies' worst fears. The organization was not just trafficking conventional weapons, but was actively working to acquire and distribute weapons of mass destruction. They had established connections with state sponsors of terrorism and were planning attacks that could result in thousands of casualties. When Sarah had gathered sufficient intelligence, she acted with the speed and precision that had earned her the Dark Angel call sign. In a series of coordinated actions that lasted less than 5 minutes, she eliminated the network's leadership, secured critical documents and communication devices, and destroyed facilities that were being used to modify weapons for terrorist use. The intelligence gathered during this operation led to the identification and disruption of terrorist cells in multiple countries. Weapons shipments were intercepted, planned attacks were prevented, and several state sponsors of terrorism were confronted with evidence that forced them to curtail their support for extremist organizations. However, the operation also marked a turning point in Sarah's career. The success had come at a significant personal cost, and the exposure of her methods and capabilities had made her even more valuable as a target for hostile organizations. Intelligence reports suggested that several groups were actively searching for the operator known as Dark Angel, offering substantial rewards for information about her identity and location. Senior command officials recognized that Sarah's effectiveness as an undercover operative had been compromised by her success. The Dark Angel reputation had become both an asset and a liability, opening certain opportunities while closing others. Decisions needed to be made about her future role and the level of risk that was acceptable for someone with her knowledge and capabilities. The solution that emerged from high-level discussions was both innovative and unprecedented. Sarah would be assigned to a new type of mission that took advantage of her unique skills while providing additional security for her identity. She would operate as part of a classified program that existed outside normal military command structures, with resources and authorities that few operators had ever been granted. The program was so sensitive that its existence was known only to a handful of senior officials. Sarah's role within it would involve missions that were too sensitive or too dangerous for conventional special operations units. She would have access to advanced technology, unlimited resources, and the authority to take whatever actions were necessary to accomplish her objectives. The transition to this new role required extensive preparation and training. Sarah spent months at classified facilities, learning to use equipment that was years ahead of anything available to conventional military units. She studied advanced techniques in intelligence gathering, cyber warfare, and unconventional operations that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. During this period, Sarah also underwent extensive medical and psychological evaluations to ensure that she was prepared for the unique stresses of her new role. The missions she would undertake would require her to operate for extended periods without support, making decisions that could affect international stability and security. When her training was complete, Sarah was assigned her first mission under the new program. The details were so classified that even this account cannot reveal their specifics. What can be said is that the mission required her to travel to a region where American military presence was not officially acknowledged, and to accomplish objectives that could not be achieved through conventional diplomatic or military means. Sarah departed for this mission on a winter morning, leaving from a facility that did not appear on any official maps. She carried identification that would not connect her to any known military or intelligence organization. Her communication protocols were so sophisticated that her messages could not be intercepted or traced by any known technology. 3 days after her departure, all communication with Sarah ceased. Her scheduled check-ins were missed, and emergency communication protocols went unanswered. Search and rescue efforts were immediately initiated, but they found no trace of her presence in the operational area. Weeks passed without any sign of Sarah or indication of what had happened to her. Intelligence agencies scoured communication intercepts, satellite imagery, and human intelligence networks, searching for any clue about the fate of the operator known as Dark Angel. The search effort was massive and comprehensive, involving resources from multiple agencies and allied nations. The investigation revealed that Sarah had successfully reached her intended destination and had begun implementing her mission plan. Surveillance footage from the region showed someone matching her description, conducting activities consistent with her known methods and capabilities. However, the trail went cold at a specific point, with no indication of what had occurred next. Some evidence suggested that Sarah had successfully completed her assigned objectives before disappearing. Intelligence gathered after her disappearance indicated that certain hostile activities in the region had been disrupted in ways that matched her likely approach to the mission. However, there was no direct confirmation of her involvement or her subsequent fate. Theories about what happened to Sarah ranged from capture by hostile forces to voluntary disappearance for security reasons. Some intelligence analysts believed she had been killed during the mission, while others suggested she had gone underground to avoid compromise of future operations. The truth remained elusive despite exhaustive investigation. In the months following her disappearance, reports began to surface of activities in various parts of the world that bore the hallmarks of Dark Angel's methods. Terrorist operations were disrupted, criminal networks were dismantled, and hostile intelligence activities were neutralized in ways that suggested the involvement of a highly skilled operator working alone. These reports were never confirmed, and official sources denied any knowledge of ongoing operations involving the missing operative. However, the pattern of activities was consistent enough to suggest that someone with Sarah's capabilities and methods was still active, operating in complete secrecy and without official support or recognition. When asked about special operations personnel during congressional hearings, senior military officials maintained that operational security required them to limit their comments about specific individuals or units. When pressed about the operator known as Dark Angel, they would only confirm that such a person had existed and had served with distinction before being listed as missing in action. The legend of Dark Angel continued to grow within military and intelligence circles. New operators were told stories about her capabilities and achievements, though the details were often embellished or modified to protect classified information. Training programs incorporated techniques that had been developed or perfected during her operations, though their origins were not always acknowledged. Years have passed since Sarah Mitchell disappeared, and the mystery of what happened to Dark Angel remains unsolved. Some believe she is still alive, operating in the deepest shadows of international intelligence and special operations. Others maintain that she died during her final mission, a casualty of the dangerous work that defined her career. What is certain is that the operator known as Dark Angel left a legacy that continues to influence special operations, training, and doctrine. Her methods and achievements became case studies in military academies and training facilities around the world. The call sign itself became a symbol of excellence and dedication that inspired new generations of operators. The question of whether Dark Angel still operates somewhere in the world may never be answered definitively. However, whenever seemingly impossible missions are accomplished with precision and skill that defies explanation, those familiar with her story wonder whether the legend has become reality once again. In the world of special operations, where the most effective operators are often those who remain completely unknown, perhaps the greatest tribute to Sarah Mitchell is that no one knows for certain whether her story has truly ended. The facility where she had once trained new operators maintained a simple memorial, known only to those with the highest security clearances. It bore no name, only the words that had defined her career. Dark Angel. When evil needs judgment, angels fly in darkness. Below these words was a simple reminder of the sacrifice required for such service. Some angels never return home.